All right, so page 252. So Yosef reveals himself to his brother. Now remember, he started crying, and then on Pasuk Gimel on page 252 it says, "Ani Yosef Ohr Somayach." Right, and yesterday we were talking about how as soon as Yosef said his name to his brothers, so then the brothers, all their questions are answered. All their questions are answered. So there's a medrash. I think I've mentioned this medrash before. There are actually two midrashim. I'll tell you what the midrashim say. There's one medrash that says, when Moshe Rabbeinu, remember the story I told you once? I've mentioned this before. I heard this from my father, Olav Hashem, when I was a little boy. This medrash appears in a certain sefer called Kol Agadot Yisrael, and it also appears in the Me'am Lo'ez, in a much briefer, and I think I heard Rabbi Gottlieb said they say it b'shem the Arizal. I don't know what the precise source of the medrash is. The medrash says like this. Listen, you got to stay with the start to finish. The medrash says that Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem how he runs justice in his world. Remember the medrash, Lior? Do you remember this medrash? He said to Moshe, Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, where's the justice in your world? The righteous suffer, the wicked prosper. How does the justice work in your world? Stay with the start to finish. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, I will show you the tip of the iceberg. And from this, you'll understand that you understand nothing about how my justice works, but you'll see that there is complete, perfect justice in my world. So Moshe Rabbeinu is shown a vision. In the vision, he sees a soldier riding on a horse on a very hot day. And the soldier gets, do you remember this medrash? And the soldier gets to a water hole. And he gets to this water hole, he gets off his horse, he bends down to take a drink. And while he's drinking, he's got a money pouch in his pocket, and it falls out stuffed with gold coins, and it falls out right by the edge of the water. Soldier gets on his horse, and he rides away, doesn't notice he lost the money pouch. A short time later, a 12-year-old boy comes by, and he bends down to get a drink, and he sees this pouch, and he picks up the pouch and opens it up. It's stuffed with gold coins, and he goes scampering off happily. Short time later, a little old man comes by, gets off his horse, takes a drink, and he goes to sleep. The soldier, in the meantime, realizes he touches his pocket, realizes he's missing the money. So he goes back to the water hole, and he sees the old man there. So he gives the old man a good hard kick, and he wakes him up, and he says, hey, old man, listen, I lost my money pouch here, and obviously you found it, because nobody's been here besides us. Give me the money, quickly, I'm in a hurry. So the old man says, I don't know what you're talking about. The soldier says, listen, if you don't give me the money, I'm going to kill you. The old man says, I don't know what you're talking about. He plucks out the sword and kills the old man, searches his pockets, obviously doesn't find anything in his pockets, and he gets on his horse, and he rides away, and the vision fades. And Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you see, there's perfect justice in the world. Moshe Rabbeinu is looking at Hashem basically the way you're looking at me right now. He says, I don't see any justice here at all. So Hashem says, okay, I'll show you another vision. And he shows him a forest. In the middle of the forest, there's a clearing. And there's a father and his 2-year-old toddler son are walking through this clearing in the forest. And there's a soldier sitting on a horse back in the thickness of the forest. He's got a perfect view of this clearing. He sees the father and the son walking along. As they're walking along, and suddenly a bandit jumps out of the other side of the forest, and he grabs the father, and he starts wrestling with the father. The soldier is watching this, doesn't get involved. He's from New York. He doesn't get involved. And they're rolling around on the ground. And eventually the bandit overpowers the father. He pulls out a dagger, and he stabs the father to death. Searches the father's pockets, and he finds a pouch stuffed with gold coins. He grabs his pouch, and he starts running away. He's such a hurry to flee that he carelessly drops the pouch. In the meantime, the soldier is watching this entire scene unfold, sees the pouch fall. So he goes riding in, he picks up the pouch, and he rides away. And again, the vision fades. God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, see? So what we call a spiritual double feature. Right? Says to Moshe Rabbeinu, see? Perfect justice. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I don't understand. I'm clueless. I don't see any justice, not in scenario number 1 and not in scenario number 2. So Kodesh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, now I'm going to explain it to you, but just realize even what you understand now is only the tip of the iceberg. I showed you 2 visions. These 2 visions actually took place. These scenarios actually took place. But the one that I showed you first actually took place second, 10 years later. So the soldier who lost the money in the first scenario at the water hole, 10 years earlier, he found that money in the forest when the bandit was running away and he dropped it. The 12-year-old boy who found the money in scenario number 1 at the water hole, 10 years earlier in the forest, he was a 2-year-old toddler whose father was murdered. He should have inherited his father's money then. It took 10 years and eventually he got that money. He got it by the water hole. And the little old man who was brutally murdered by the soldier in scenario number 1, 10 years earlier was a young bandit who had murdered the father. 10 years later, he himself was killed by the sword. And not only he was killed, the very soldier who should have intervened in the forest, it was that same soldier who caught him 10 years later at the water hole and killed him at the water hole. So that's the Moshe Rabbeinu. Everything works out. Everything works out. You just got to know that you got to know what's happening behind the scenes. So sometimes we see HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing things, we're clueless. Why did this happen? Sometimes in life you see things play out later. You say, Sometimes you don't. Sometimes we'll only find out in the world to come. But when the brothers say to Yosef, Yosef says to the brother, I need Yosef, all of a sudden everything becomes clear, number 1. Now I want you to look very carefully at the part. We're going to take this a little deeper. The brothers could not respond because they were, how does the arts go, disconcerted before him. Nivhalu means they were frightened. Literally means, libahel means to get frightened, a sudden fright. There was like a sudden shock over here. Ooh, this is Yosef. I mean, the plain meaning is obviously, when you have a brother who you sell, you kidnap and sell him, and then 22 later he says, hi fellas, it's me. Like, oh, yeah, what's been going on? There's like, oh, I mean, we really felt bad about that. It was just something we had to do. It's one of those awkward moments in life. So you can understand they're speechless. They're just like, oh boy, it all hits you full force. That's certainly the plain meaning. At a deeper level, there are several explanations here. One of the explanations is that what did they sell him for? What did they sell him for? So they sold him, the Medrash says they sold him for shoes. The money they took, they bought shoes with it. It's a cheap price. Right? Nivhalu mipanav means when all of a sudden you take a look at Yosef, this is the king, this is Yosef, this is our brother Yosef, and the realization, this piece of value, Yosef, as valuable as he is, as a Yosef, we sold him off so cheap. We let it go for so cheap, right? Look, what's that? That's very disconcerted. Right? When they used to have these game shows, very, very sophisticated game shows on TV, like The Price is Right, Let's Make a Deal. My father wouldn't let me watch them growing up. I was only allowed to watch them when I was homesick from school. He wouldn't let it. He said it was an insult to anybody's intelligence. That was number 1. Number 2, he didn't want me to think that there's anybody out there giving away money. Because you watch these game shows, like you can win money. And my father said, nobody's giving you away money. As a matter of fact, my father used to get, he was a very wise man, and he used to get, every day he'd get like a stack of mail. So a lot of it was junk mail. So I was watching, it drove me nuts, because he would take the envelopes, he would look at it and just dump it in the wastebasket. Yeah. One after the other, would dump them in the wastebasket, wouldn't even open them. So I said, Dad, how come you're not opening it? He says, because there's nothing in there. So I said, well, maybe somebody's sending you money. He says, nobody's sending me money. So I said, well, can I have the envelopes and open them up, whatever I find I could keep that? I could keep? He said, yeah, give me $1 for each envelope and you can keep whatever you find inside. Never took him up on it. How do you like that? How do you like that? So he didn't want, so there was this one show, I think it was what do you call it, what did I say, The Price is Right, what was the other, Let's Make a Deal. So there's always this contest, they say, okay, do you want the $500 or you want what's behind the curtain? Right? So a guy says, I want the $500. Then they roll back the curtain and there's just a garbage pail there. And the guy feels great, I made the right choice. Now, once in a while, you want the $500? You want the $1,000? I'll take the $1,000. Then they roll back the curtain. There's a $250,000 Lamborghini. And how do you feel about that $1,000 now? Oh boy, oh boy. You'll never enjoy it. Right? I could have had that Lamborghini. So hold the question. So there's sometimes in life where you exchange something, and you realize what you could have had, and so here is the lesson for us. Like what we could have had in this life, what we could have in this life and what we traded in for kind of nonsense and time wasters that we traded in for in this world. That's the lesson for us. Yosef's brothers is just meant to be a lesson for us. That, wow, we sold the Yosef so cheap, we'd sell our lives cheap. Remember, they're supposed to, we're not supposed to just like, oh boy, did they make a mistake. No, we're supposed to look in the mirror. Boy, am I making a mistake. Right? Each person, you guys haven't, because you guys have taken on something very worthwhile. But there are a lot of people there who didn't end up where you've ended up. So there's like, what are you wasting your way? That kind of nonsense. You know how many people have ended up 70 years old or 80 years old and say, I got nothing left. I wasted my life. I got some money, so what? I'm not taking it with me, and I know I'm not taking it with me. And then at 80 years old, it's too late. It's never too late, theoretically, but for most people, it's too late. And all you do is you live with regret. You go to your grave with regret. I wasted my life. I gave it away, and it went so fast that I got nothing to show for it at the end. I didn't have a family. I didn't make a big family. I didn't want to have a family. I wanted to live for myself. And you got nothing. And you got nothing left. That's the, what do you call it? That's the second lesson. The third lesson is that the brothers are embarrassed because in their minds, this guy can't be their brother. And also they find out the emperor of King of England, the viceroy, the ruler of Egypt, the most powerful world in a country in the world, is their brother who they kidnapped and sold? What are the chances that the brother we kidnapped and sold as a slave ends up as this monarch in Egypt? And they're embarrassed at the fact that they put a limitation on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what they're embarrassed about. They can't, they're nivhalu mipanav. What did we say about the Ribbon Shalom? What did we say about the Ribbon Shalom? What does this tell us in our relationship to God? We never dawned on us that this could be Yosef. And that's what they're really upset about. Is we're men of faith. And we somehow put a limit on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Rabbi, there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, you look at three things, you'll never come to sin. Where you came from, where you're going to. And then it says, and before whom you're going to give a din v'cheshbon. You're going to give an accounting and a reckoning. They say, Melech Malchei Amlachim, before the King of Kings. So it's well known, the Vilna Gaon says, what does it mean? You're going to give a reckoning, a din v'cheshbon. You're going to give a reckoning and an accounting before the King of Kings. So the Vilna Gaon says, well, you're going to give her a din. Let's say a person spoke Lashon Hara. You're going to give a din for having spoken Lashon Hara. You sat there for that good half hour and a good juicy gossip session. For that, we're going to be accountable. But there's also going to be a calculation. There's a reckoning and an accounting. The reckoning is what we did wrong. The accounting is what we could have been doing right at that time. I mean, if you had a half hour where you could sit and schmooze and talk Lashon Hara, for that same half hour, you could have been talking about the Gemara. For that same half hour, you obviously had verbal energy. So for that same half hour, you could have been saying Tehillim, you could have been learning Torah, you could have been discussing Gemara. So there's going to be two. It works in two ways. There's what you did wrong and what you didn't do right. It's a frightening thing. But like everything else, the same way that there's a reckoning and accounting on the negative, there's reckoning on the positive. Right now, you guys could be sitting and looking at a smartphone. You could be looking at a movie right now. You could be looking at worse. And you're not. You're learning Torah. Okay, so then there's a reckoning and accounting. It's a din and cheshbon, right? When you're doing something that you're doing something difficult and you would rather be doing something more entertaining, and you're not doing it, you obviously get rewarded for that as well. Okay, number 3. Number 4 or 5, I don't remember which one. One of the Hasidic masters, the Shem Shmuel, one of the Hasidic masters is what I call Litvische Hasidus, because it hangs tight. It hangs tight. It's very, very tight. And so I call it Litvische Hasidus. He says like this: there's Hasidus, and there's Litvische Hasidus. There's eating the kugel with your hands at the tish, and there's eating the kugel with a fork. There's different types. There's So the what do you call it? My son told me he was at a tish. I've never been to. I think I've been to one tish in my life. My sons told me you go to a tish, and they actually kind of toss, like, it's one thing if you toss me an apple, But they toss fish. He said to me, they toss gefilte fish. I said, no, you're not telling me the truth. He said, no, they toss gefilte fish. Listen, I don't eat gefilte fish on a good day. But now you're talking about gefilte fish untouched by human hands. That's just not my thing. They actually toss gefilte fish. That I can't handle. So I'll call upon him. The Shem Yishmael says like this: a very deep idea, and you can't ask any questions. If you hear it, you hear it. There's a pasuk that says, "Chochmas Adam ta'ir panav." A person's wisdom causes his face to glow. If you ever saw, I told you, I gave you an example. If you ever saw Rabbi Yashiv Zatzal or Reb Chaim Kanievsky, you walk and you see a tangible glow. Right? There's a glow. Some people, the purity, the Torah, the combination of Torah and purity causes them what we call a hadras panim. There's a certain luster on their face. Actually, you can tangibly. I remember the first time I went to see Reb Chaim Kanievsky, I came walking in. He was sitting like this learning. He was in Kol Chazon Ish, and I was waiting in line to ask him something, and he looked up. As I got there, he kind of looked up at me, and I just kind of like well. That was the first time I was just like, whoa, somebody turned a flashlight on in my eyes. Right? We took a bunch of guys from Ohr Somayach once to Reb Chaim Kanievsky to get a bracha. So we all crowd into the room. So Reb Chaim was sitting like this, because we had arranged in advance to come in for a bracha. So Reb Chaim's learning like this, and he looks up. He says, is everybody here? So the guys were still filing in. So as they're filing in, he learns another couple lines. Then he looks up, and he gives a bracha to the whole group. So we walk outside. I see one of the guys looks a little rattled. So I said to him, what did you think? So he goes, oh, he was exuding something. I don't know what it was, but he was exuding something. He was exuding something. So there's a pasuk that says, Chochmas Adam ta'ir panav. A person's wisdom, you can sometimes look at a person, you can sense this is a wise person. You just see wisdom on his face. You see sometimes a light. So the Shem Yishmael says, Yosef was obviously, the Gemara refers to him as a Talmid Chacham. Gemara calls Yosef a Talmid Chacham, and Yaakov taught him all that Torah. And he was certainly a pure person. So Yosef obviously had a glow. So he asked, so why didn't the brothers recognize him all along? The answer is, Yosef not only had a glow, he knew how to turn it on and turn it off. So he could turn off the glow, whatever that means, right? So when he reveals himself, what does he do? He turns it on. He turns on the glow. So he says that's what the words say. Ki nivhalu mipanav. Normally it's they were frightened before him. How does the article tell? They were disconcerted before him. But mipanav also means from his face. Could translate it, they were frightened from his face. Yosef all of a sudden turned on the light. And when they look at the light of Yosef's face, right? So what is it that they're afraid of? What is it that they're disconcerted by? They're disconcerted by this tzaddik we sold, the realization of who he really is. We sold him. That's what we did. Could you imagine you found out you sold somebody, it turned out it was Reb Chaim Kanievsky? Right? We sold him. Right? Yosef was greater. We sold Yosef. That's Nivhalu Mipanav. But Yomer Yosef, now, just hold on to your seats while we read the next one. Shlomi, you had a question?
Yeah, this was back on the...
No, let's stick with this for a time. I got to cover some ground. Okay? But Yomer Yosef Alechav. Now just stay seated while we read this Rashi, okay? Don't go anywhere now, and don't jump up and down. Vayomer Yosef Alechav, Gishuna Elai Vayigoshu. Approach me. And they approached. They were intimidated. Yosef calls them closer. Vayomer Ani Yosef Achichem Asher Mechartem Osi Mitzrayim. I am Yosef, your brother, who you sold to Egypt. Now Yosef is covering a couple of points here. Number one, he's saying, I'm Yosef, your brother. You don't have to be afraid of me. I'm your brother. But now he hits the single clearest point of identification. They're not sure. Yeah. And Yosef says one thing which puts them to rest. First of all, there's an opinion he called them closer, but not Binyamin. Because Binyamin didn't know about the sale. Binyamin wasn't there. And Yosef doesn't want to hear Binyamin say it either. He says, come here, I want to tell you something. You just stay there for a second, Binyamin. Guys, I'm Yosef, your brother who you sold to Egypt. And that is the clearest sign of identification. Because the only one in the world who knew about it other than them was him. No one knew that he was sold to Egypt. They didn't know. Nobody knew about the sale. They didn't tell anybody. So how does he know about the sale? There's only one other person. When you get sold, you know about it. Right? That's one of the things that goes with being sold is you know you were sold. Right? So that's the sign, the clearest form of identification. But now Yosef has one other form. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, Gishuna Eli. Left column of Rashi, 3 lines from the top. Left column of Rashi. Gishuna Eli. Ra osam nisogim lochor. He saw them moving away. Omar achshav ochai nichlami. My brothers are embarrassed. Kora lahem berloshon raka v'tachanunim. He called them over gently, softly, pleadingly. Vehera lahem shehu mohul. He showed them that he was circumcised. Now, yeah, exactly. If it means what it sounds like, it's kind of indiscreet. Number one. Number two, that's if you're an emotional cucumber, right? But just from a purely lumdish point of view, it doesn't help in any way. The entire Egypt was circumcised. So what does it help? Are you going to ask? The entire Egypt. So what does it help? That doesn't prove anything. And therefore, it means that the first way you understood it also doesn't mean what it sounds like. When he said he showed them he was circumcised, it means he's saying, hey, look, ask around. The whole country is circumcised here. Ask them where the idea came from. You'll find out the idea came from me. It literally means he showed me he was circumcised. He says, ask around, because it wouldn't have helped. We have 2 problems. Number one, it's indiscreet. Number two, it wouldn't help. It doesn't prove anything. When Moshe Rabbeinu was found, she opened up the thing, she saw he was circumcised. Right? The Egyptians didn't circumcise by that point. When Moshe Rabbeinu was found, she pulls him out of the water, she opens it up, she sees he's circumcised, the baby's circumcised, she knew he's a Jewish child. But here it doesn't help you because there was still the decree of Yosef to that the Egyptians circumcised. Oh, so what does it mean? It means ask around and you'll see. Find out whose idea this was. Oh, now we understand whose idea was. That's the proof that Yosef was the one. That's the proof that he's Yosef. Okay. So Yosef tells them the following. It says, Ve'ata alte otzvu. Don't be upset. I don't know how does it translate? Arts goes, don't be upset. How does he translate? Do not be distressed. That's probably a better word. Ve'yichar beinechem ki mecharta mi'osihena. Don't be upset that you sold me here. This covers two points. Yosef's covering 2 points. He's saying, number one, don't be upset that you sold me. And don't be upset that you sold me if your plan was A. If you're upset that you sold me at all, don't be upset. And if you're upset that you sold me and I ended up as a king, which is certainly not what you wanted, don't be upset about that either. God has sent me here to be a savior for everybody. Because now I've created a foundation for the Jewish people, and I'm going to take care of everybody. You have no reason to be upset. You have no reason to be upset. Now, the obvious question here is what? What's the obvious question? The obvious question is, well, sure, it may have worked out well, but that certainly wasn't your intention. It certainly wasn't your intention. So, what good does it do? You intended to have me sold as a kidnapped. So he said, don't be upset, it all worked out well anyway. You get into a complicated situation over, you see, they asked the question about Paro, right? Why should Paro be punished? There was a decree on the Jewish people that they have to go into exile. So why are Paro and the Egyptians punished? If anyway God said to Avraham Avinu they're going to go into exile, why are they punished? Oh, so there are 2 answers. There are 2 approaches. There's one approach that says, sure, they're supposed to be punished. Who told you to do the mitzvah? Right? Who told you to be the punisher? Right? There's another opinion. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's the Ramban. One of the opinions is the Ramban. I think the Ramban's opinion is you wouldn't be punished if you did it to the degree that God wanted it done. The reason, exactly what you're saying, Lior, the reason they get punished is because you went above and beyond. You did it. You did a mitzvah l'mahadrin, right? Nobody asked you to go and whip them and whatever. So they're different. So according to that second approach, Yosef's saying, listen, you did exactly what God wanted to have done. Therefore, there's no punishment coming. However, if you remember on Yom Kippur, we have the Asara Haruge Malchus, the 10 martyrs. right? The most famous one probably Rabbi Akiva, right? The 10 martyrs are killed. So if you remember there's a conversation there between the Roman emperor and these 10 sages. And what is the conversation in the Yom Kippur liturgy? So it starts out where he says to them, hey, listen, according to your law, somebody who kidnaps and sells somebody is liable for the death penalty. What punishment did the brothers ever get for selling and kidnapping and selling Yosef? They never got a punishment. So there have never been 10 men like you together in one generation, 10 great men together since the time of the brothers. Therefore, the 10 of you are going to be an atonement for the brothers. And then he executes them and tortures each one of them to death. That's what we say in the Yom Kippur, in that dirge on Yom Kippur. Now, the only problem with that dirge is that the 10 men, that the conversation with the 10 men couldn't have taken place because they did not live together in the same generation. The Asara Harugei Malchus were not together in the same generation. Therefore, the commentaries say that it was not a real conversation, that it was put into the liturgy in order to arouse us, to pull our heartstrings a little bit, tug at our heartstrings on Yom Kippur to arouse some emotion. But the conversation never took place. But that the 10 men who were killed were a reincarnation of the brothers, that the Arizal says that the 10 men were a reincarnation of the brothers. And Shimon is Rabbi Akiva. Shimon comes back as Rabbi Akiva, and that's why there are 24,000 from disciples of Rabbi Akiva who died. Not coincidentally, there were 24,000 of the tribe of Shimon who died in the plague at the time of Korach. So there the 24,000, and there are a lot of similarities there. If you look at the pasuk, what does Yosef say? Ve'ata, and now, alte otzvu, don't be distressed. There's not going to be any rebirth. The word ve'ata means now. Ve'ata, and now, don't be distressed. There's not going to be any retribution. But sometime down the line, there is going to be retribution. Ve'ata, now there isn't. But down the line, there will be retribution. And it's going to be in the Gilgul, when they come back reincarnated as the 10 tzaddikim, then there's going to be retribution for the sale of Yosef. Okay, that's what the Parsha say. Okay, so Yosef says to what do you call it? He says, okay, now I want you to go get my father. I'm back on 254, page 254. Now watch this. He says, "V'ata alu al aviv amarta me lav komar bincha Yosef samani elokim la'odon l'chol Mitzrayim rida elai al ta'amod." It says a message to Yaakov, come down to me, and I'm going to put you in the land of Goshen, and I'm going to support you. Pasuk Yud Aleph. V'chilkalti oscha sham. He sends a message to Yaakov. Yaakov does not want to go to Mitzrayim. Why doesn't Yaakov want to go to Mitzrayim? Because it's in Mitzrayim. It's like saying, why don't you want to go to Las Vegas? Because it's in Las Vegas, that's why. Right? Because everything bad is there. So I don't want to go. Yaakov doesn't want to go to Mitzrayim. Yosef's going to have to convince him somehow to come to Mitzrayim. A famine, Yaakov's not intimidated by the famine in Eretz Yisrael. But what does Yaakov want, Yosef want? He says, first of all, I'm going to put you in the land of Goshen. You're going to be in Mea Sharim. Right? You'll be in Bnei Brak. Right? You'll be in Kiryat Sefer. Don't worry. You're going to be alone. You'll be in Lakewood. You'll be in Lakewood. You're not going to be anywhere near Las Vegas. You'll be in Lakewood, number one. And number two, V'chilkalti oscha sham, I will support you. Now Yosef is saying to Yaakov that you're not going to suffer poverty here. I will take care of you. I'm in position to take care of you. Which begs a question. Did you ever notice Avram Avinu was wealthy? Yitzchak was wealthy. Yaakov was wealthy. And Yosef was wealthy. Who was the wealthiest Jew in the desert? In the desert. Who was the wealthiest Jew in the desert? Korach was wealthy. But there was one Jew who was even wealthier, the Gemara says. The wealthiest Jew in the desert was Moshe Rabbeinu. He got wealthy because he kept there's an opinion that he had in his tent, it says a machsev shel tzamperinon, which means a plutonium mine. It wasn't plutonium, I'm just using it as a translation. Isn't plutonium the most precious metal? A diamond mine right in his tent. He had a mine of machsev shel sanperinon. Sanperinon is a very precious metal of some sort. Is it sapphire? San Perino. It sounds like it. Sounds like
Sapphire comes from Old French. And the English word sapphire comes from Old French, which I think comes from Greek originally.
Is that, very interesting. Very interesting. It's logical. It sounds phonetically like. Do you know French?
No, I just looked at the article footnote.
Okay, great. That works even better. I love it. That's excellent. That's great. I know French. I mean, a couple of sentences that I learned in high school. That counts, doesn't it? Bonjour, monsieur. Comment allez-vous aujourd'hui? Très bien, merci. Et vous? Pas mal. I don't know what I said. I got an A. I got an A in both years. So, what do you call it? So why is it that they were all rich? If we laugh and we say wealth, where you're living for money in this world, money is what do you call wealth is a test, and wealth, and we always say we don't chase money, don't pursue money. Yet the Avos were rich, and Moshe Rabbeinu was rich, and Yosef was rich, and Rabbi Akiva was rich, and Rabbi Yehuda Anasi was rich. The Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda Anasi on his deathbed, he raised his 10 fingers up, he says, on his deathbed, he said, you know that I got no pleasure from this world whatsoever with these 10 fingers. And he's fabulously wealthy. Fabulously wealthy. Wealthiest man of his generation. Rav Ashi was rich, who compiled the Shas. We're looking to put one more person on that list, guys. Binyamin Dovid ben Ita Pesa. Start davening, right? What? How come? What do you call it? How come they're rich? If rich isn't such a what do you call? We're always like, well, money is a test, and money is this and that. The answer is that wealth has one benefit, which is it gives you independence. You don't have to rely on anybody else, and you don't have to conform to anybody else. You could do your own thing. Avram Avinu is going up against an entire world. Yitzchak's going up against the entire world. Moshe Rabbeinu is going up against an entire generation. The benefit of wealth is that I could do my thing, and I don't have to give in to anybody else's ideals or anybody else's pressure. Yosef is saying to Yaakov, you'll be in Goshen, and I will support you. You are completely independent of any Egyptian influence. That's the benefit of wealth. Just come down to me. Just come down to Egypt. So, in Pasuk Yud Daled, 14. So then the Torah says like this. Vayipol al Tzavari, he hugs everybody. First he hugs, Vayipol al Tzavari Binyamin Achiv, a major embrace on Binyamin's over his neck. Vayef, he cries. Ubinyamin bocha al tzavorav. Binyamin cried on Yosef's neck. Now take a look at Rashi over. Then Yosef kisses and cries over all of his brothers. But take a look at Rashi over here. Right column of Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Vayipol al tzavari Binyamin achi vayef. Why did he cry? Al shnei mikdashos shasidim lios v'chalko shel Binyamin v'sofen l'charet. He cried over the 2 Beis HaMikdashes that are going to be in Binyamin's portion, and they were destroyed. Ubinyamin bocha al tzavorov, al mishkan Shiloh she'osid lios v'chalko shel Yosef v'sofen l'charet. The tabernacle in Shiloh that was going to be in Yosef's portion. So there are 2 questions here. Question number 1, why are you crying about something in the future? By the way, why are you crying at all? Why is there even a concept of tears of joy? People cry tears of joy. Why do you cry tears of joy? What are you crying about? You should be happy. What are you crying about? People, because parents marry off a child and they cry at a chasna. Right? The mother's crying out of emotion. The father's crying because of how much money it costs. But okay, they're crying and they marry off a child, they're crying. All the father's thinking is, how could something so short-lived cost so much? Right? And the mother, a wedding in Israel, by the way, you know how much expensive wedding in Israel costs? In America, how much is an expensive wedding? $75,000. $75,000, you can't get a booze table for $75,000. In America, an expensive wedding, it costs $250,000, $300,000, $400,000. $75,000 is a basic wedding. $75,000. What's $75,000? $75,000. I'm telling you, for $75,000, you get chicken wings, right? You want some serious schmarg, you're going to have to pay. It's something you don't cut prices of what people pay for. In Israel, expenses, the wedding itself, if you get to $15,000, it's already an expensive wedding. Wow. Yeah, but then they hit you up for more because then you got to buy the couple an apartment. That's where the major expense is. The wedding is a piece of kugel. You know, half the time these wedding halls, they're like 2 or 3 wedding halls connected. Every day Israeli wedding, or 2 or 3 wedding halls connected. Half the time I walk in, I see a bunch of people I know, but I'm at the wrong wedding. Because everybody knows everybody, you know. Oh, this is the Cohen's wedding. No, I'm supposed to be at the Levin's. 1 second, I'll be back in a second. I like the pep, you know, the wedding hall. I'm telling you, that's what happens. You go to a wedding, half the people you know anyway. Once in a while, you end up, I go to a wedding outside. I'm in a bunch of Hasidim there, so this isn't my dad. So I go to the other hall. Say, this happened to be a walk-in. Oh, I'm sorry, wasn't invited to this one. Big deal. Neither were half the other people. They also got mixed up. So you go. So okay, now the reason you cry tears of joy is because you're thinking of the pain that you went through to get to this point. That's why you cry tears of joy, because there's a lot of pain to get to the point. The joy is the sense of there's a release. All that pain has built up. That's why you're crying tears of joy, number one. The question here is, why are they cross-crying? I mean, if you're going to cry, if you have a premonition of what's going to happen in the future. So Yosef should cry for his Mishkan, and Binyamin should cry for his 2 Beis HaMikdash. Why is he crying for his Beis HaMikdash? He's crying for his Mishkan over there. So one of the Mefarshim says like this: what destroyed the second base? What was the straw that broke? The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of the 3 cardinal sins, the Gemara says. Gemara in Yuma says, Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, and Shfichus Damim. That was the first Beis HaMikdash. The second Beis HaMikdash, which put us into this Gullus, which is really this is the klop. The first Beis HaMikdash, the Gullus was 70 years, first exile. Second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and that we've been suffering ever since, right? Why are we in this exile? What was the Gemara say? Because of sinas chinam, right? Lashon hara, which is the main what's it called? Symptom of sinas chinam, right? But because of sinas chinam, this baseless hatred, that's what destroyed the second Beis HaMikdash. What separated? Why are Yosef and Binyamin crying? Because what caused them to be separated for so many years? Basis sinas chinam. What's the way you rectify sinas chinam? How do you rectify sinas chinam? What's that? Love. Well, there is. You see, people call it avas chinam, but there is no expression of avas chinam in Chazal. In the Gemara, they use the expression sinas chinam. There is no avas chinam. There's no expression. There's avas Yisrael, but there's no avas chinam. That expression is a modern expression. But because by us, the standard is Ava. Ava Shein Tlu Yiblav is the expression in Pirkei Avos. Right? But there's no Avas Chinam. But the idea behind it is that if Sinas Chinam means, where does Sinas Chinam come from? I'm concerned about me, you're concerned about you, so there's resentment. The rectification is to be concerned for the other guy. So what do Yosef and Binyamin do? There's cross-crying. That's why we were separated, because everybody's worried about themselves. If we be concerned about others, especially in this case where it's a result of jealousy. Jealousy means I'm thinking about me, and whatever you got, I resent because I should have it. And if you would be concerned about the other guy and happy for the other guy, so you wouldn't be in this situation, number one. So the Gemara says, somebody who goes to a wedding, now let's face it, guys, let's be honest, okay, let's be honest. When you get an invitation to a wedding and you go into a wedding hall, what are you thinking about? What's the first thing you're thinking about? You're definitely thinking about food. And I think, where am I going to sit? Right? And sometimes I'm thinking, how soon am I going to get out of here? Yeah. Right? There are different thoughts. And then a lot depends on, it's Hubba Hotel, it depends on the food, Oh, that's it, okay, I'm out of here. Right? Then, depending on how good a friend I am, how long will I stay, and you're going to celebrate now, you're going to dance for the chassan and the kal. So the Gemara says, somebody who brings joy to a chassan and a kal, to a chassan, you're mesamech a chassan, it's as if you've rebuilt one of the ruins of Yerushalayim. What has one thing got to do with the other? I went to a wedding, I gladdened the chassan. What's that got to do with rebuilding the ruins of Yerushalayim? The answer is, you go to a wedding, and there are two attitudes. There's, what's in it for me? And then there's a second attitude, which is, it has nothing to do with me. I'm here for him. I'm here for him. Oh, that attitude of I'm here for him, that rebuilds one of the ruins of Yerushalayim. That means you just put a brick in to the rebuilding of Yerushalayim. Because Yerushalayim was destroyed because of an attitude of what's in it for me. And if you could change that attitude and go, what's in it for him? So then you're already rebuilding Yerushalayim. There was once a wedding here in Yerushalayim. There was a snowstorm in Yerushalayim. There was a blizzard in Yerushalayim. Unlike the blizzard in America right now, right, where the whole country is buried under snow. In Israel, a blizzard means there's 2 inches of snow. Shuts down the whole city. There are no snow tires here. It happens once every 3 years. There are no snow tires. It's all hilly. Nobody could get anywhere. There was a wedding at the Tamir Hall on the remote road. There's a wedding. So the problem is nobody could get there. The Kala happened to live in my neighborhood. They brought her with a Hatzalah ambulance because they have snow tires. So they brought the bride with a Hatzalah ambulance, right? The groom happened to live in Ramot. So he was able to slip down, just kind of ski down to the wedding hall, right? It's on the remote road. So he was able to slide his way. Somehow they got him down to the wedding hall. The bride they brought in an ambulance and outside with snow tires. Problem is there are no guests. Nobody could get there. I was at a wedding the night before as the snow started, and the concern at the wedding was, how are we going to get home? Because it was already snowing, or the buses stopped running right away. So, okay, they got a problem. There are no guests. So what do? They sent out word to all the yeshivas and seminaries that there's a wedding with nobody to glad. The place filled up with bachers and bacherettes at the wedding hall. The place filled up. There were so many people came to do the mitzvah to glad the chazan. People they didn't even know. You didn't even know the chazan kala. So many people showed up. They actually ran out of food. Could you imagine a Jewish wedding and they ran out of food? Right? Could you imagine? Could you imagine? An open invite. Yeah, that's possible. That can happen. Somebody who does that is rebuilding one of the ruins of Yerushalayim. Okay. All right, guys. See you tomorrow.